Today, we have Jeff Korn, professional magician. I can't wait to hear more about him. Friend of the show, Eric Casey, introduced me, and he was more than happy to come on and talk about magic. So welcome, Jeff Korn.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me on. This is going to be awesome. I'm really excited to do this.
What makes you so excited, Jeff?
I get to talk about me. I think that's pretty much it. Like, I've got a healthy amount of narcissism that I think that most artists need to have to thrive in this world. So, yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. Okay, I knew you were the right one.
You should also know I chose today to like get my workout in for the decade or so. It's been many months. So like now I'm kind of pumped up, right? I got a lot of energy.
Awesome. Yeah, let's waste that by sitting on our butts now.
Exactly.
What was today? Leg day?
That's exactly what it was. That's why I'm sitting down.
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to be able to stand back up.
No, I used to work out with a Navy SEAL. That
oh
was
my God.
A huge error. 25 pounds is the best shape of my life. I could pick you and someone else up and run a mile. Cool. So I do want to ask, who is Jeff Korn? For people that don't know.
I grew up in Florida. I had no magic connections. Somebody showed me some magic. You know, my uncle, it was the same story everyone has, right? I was 6 or 7 years old and he showed me a card trick, right? And then, you know, we're 30 years later and like I've been able to do some pretty cool stuff because of it. In Florida, though, there was nobody around. So until I was in high school, I'd never met anyone else who had any interest in magic. And I got really lucky because right after I left, after I graduated high school, I joined the Air Force and went to New Mexico. Well, a month before I got to New Mexico, the magic shop opened. You know, so I walked in as they were unpacking boxes and I just had this, you know, this interest that was like a real love for it, but it was always, you know, like, here's my book collection. And at the time, I mean, this was, you know, 25 years ago. So my book collection was things like the Mark Wilson course, some of the Hugard books, right? The classics, but the classics, you know, I didn't have access to a lot of the video products that were out at the time. I didn't know about, you know, internet magic community.
What year was this?
This is probably right around the turn of the century, like 2000, 2001.
Okay. Yeah, there wasn't anything.
Yeah, you know, so I remember when, you know, Penguin Magic and Illusionist popped up on the scene and it's just, you know, suddenly it's a whole new world. I'll tell you, a fun story for me is the first real exposure to sleight of hand card magic that I ever had was a video called Impossible Card Magic from Ray Cosby, which if you ever watch the video, it is some of the most difficult sleight of hand. But I come in knowing, you know, just the basics. And I'm watching this guy do things that are stunning and like almost put it aside. Like, oh, I don't think I'm qualified for this stuff. So yeah. I had that nice, like I figured out my Dunning-Kruger bell curve changed that day, right? Like I figured out how much I don't know whenever I saw that. I thought I was pretty cool. You know, in my high school, like, everybody wants to come over and watch me do whatever. But, anyway, so I moved to Albuquerque and I just so happened to, you know, start working with this magic shop. They had a theater right next door. It was built into an old fire station. So cool. All of the barracks were converted into retail spots. So we had these huge rooms. We had, you know, this big theater that I got to watch some really good performances from some unknowns, but we did a lot of lectures. I got to learn like firsthand from some really cool people, but a handful of them were lifelong performers that just had information they were willing to throw at me. You know, if I was willing to pull out a notebook and write, they would keep talking, you know?
I mean, this sounds like this was on a base. This wasn't like on.
No, this was, this was about 3 miles off base so
easy to get
Albuquerque.
to.
Yeah, it was called the Magic Juggler Shop or the Magic and Juggling Shop eventually. and it was 3 miles from, or I'm sorry, 3 blocks from the college campus. So
Holy
every day
moly.
we had college students walking by. It was in the bar district, the arts area.
Hmm.
So there were always people to perform for. We'd go out and street perform. They would close off the street, 3 or 4 times a year. And I'd get to go out there and practice that. I had a theater. I could do, shows for 30 people bring a table, do a stand-up show. Literally anything I wanted to work on, it was right there. The magic
Wow.
world was at my fingertips. It was incredible. And then once I got out of the Air Force, I moved to Las Vegas, and it was the same thing. I got to do some cool shows and met all of my heroes. I think that I was exposed to the best magicians that were alive. And then once the pandemic hit, everything kind of shifted. I moved back east. So now I'm in Jacksonville.
Hmm.
I spent a few years in Georgia, a few hours outside of Atlanta, or about an hour and a half outside of Atlanta, a few hours outside of Atlanta, and you're not in Georgia anymore. But,
Yeah.
so like I've been all over. I've gotten to see magic shops that were, designed for magicians. I got to see the ones that were designed for tourists. I worked in the magic shops in every magic shop in Vegas. I worked in at one point or another. So it's always kind of been the lifelong pursuit.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild. So since we're going down that road, so you get to Vegas. What
Mm-hmm.
makes you want to? You go to Vegas with the intent on performing.
No, actually, we were talking to anxiety issues, right? My
Yes.
anxiety, I didn't want to be a professional performer. I worked on computers, right? I
Hmm.
was doing computer science. I was cool with that. I really enjoyed it. And then when I got out of the Air Force, I was like, well, that's obviously what I'm going to do because that's where the money is. And I could just keep doing my shows on the side. And it just didn't pan out. So the opportunity to move to Las Vegas came up, and I'm like, well, I'll just go do computer science in Las Vegas, right? Like I still wasn't thinking about the possibility of performing, and I'm a terrible businessman. I've learned over the years, so my enthusiasm goes into the creative side of it, I think,
Got it.
and
Yep.
I love performing. I hate getting people to give me money to perform. Like I got to figure that part of it out. So I never thought about full-time performing. I went out there with that idea, and then I didn't really like, I realized that my love, my enthusiasm wasn't in computers, and I threw mine away. Just got rid of it, right? Like it's just gone. And
Okay.
I went without for a few years, and I had at the time I only had a laptop, and it had like something was crashing on it, and it's like I'm going to have to break this apart and now learn another aspect of computer science. And I think I ended up like, oh, well, there's my bow, and I really like archery. Let me practice that hobby. And I think I shot arrows through it. I'm pretty sure that was my
Nice.
my method of disposing of it. I was so frustrated. I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'm going to combine different hobbies, right? So I was done. I was so burned out on computers that I wanted nothing to do with it for many years. And when that happened, I started, I jumped into the performing world, but I kind of lucked into a lot of that too. I was hanging out with, really like the knowledgeable people, all the people I wanted. I wanted to go to Las Vegas to learn magic more so than to do that, right? A big part of it was two people in particular were Paul Vigil and Johnny Thompson. Johnny Thompson is just the greatest magician to ever live, right? He's just the most
Yeah.
knowledgeable guy that I've ever spent any time with. And I used to watch the L&L videos that he filmed, 98 probably.
Yeah.
And it's the best magic I had ever learned. It was, exactly the kind of stuff that appealed to me. So the more I thought about it, and then when the opportunity to go to Vegas, I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Hmm.
I knew Paul. Paul was a student of Johnny's. And I'm like, well, this is, why wouldn't I go? I was 24 at the time. I had just gotten out of a relationship in New Mexico, right? I was engaged and that didn't work out. And I didn't want to stay there. There were no real opportunities. The magic shop had changed ownership while I was gone. So I didn't know any, like my scene had moved on. So going to Vegas, it was just to continue my growth, and I just happened to jam with a magician that was asked for a referral. And that's what happened. And that got me into the Vegas Magic Theater at the Gold Coast Casino in Vegas. That was a 3-month run, but that got my name in with another guy. Just so happened to hear about me through that. Oh, he must be good. He's doing this thing over here with, Paul Stone, the guy that did that, produces some of the, some amazing magic shows. So if I'm working with that guy, I must be, right? And that's the way the magic world works, right? And it just snowballed. And for the last 6 years I was in Las Vegas, I had a small room on the edge of the Grand Canyon, and I just got to hang out and do magic for tourists all day.
That's awesome.
I can't beat it,
I mean, that's not just how magic works. That's how everything works. I know about Johnny Thompson. I have his book. I had one of the books that he signed, and nice. It's just like, so it's such a good book. And I know he helped Penn and Teller a lot with their show. Mm-hmm. I know that he's amazing because I've read his book, but for people that don't know the importance of history of magicians, how one magician kind of leads to another. First of all, how important is it to, as a hobbyist or even as a professional, to know who these magicians are? And then let's talk about who Johnny Thompson was, because you had firsthand knowledge. Like how important it is to know who Di Vernon is. What does it mean? Is it important for me as a hobbyist? Why should I know who that is?
I think it is. I definitely think it is, and if you were to compare it to any other art form, you can learn to play a guitar without knowing who Eddie Van Halen is, right? But if you really want to get good, you're going to find out who this guy is eventually. So you might as well speed up the process and look for the greats. You don't want to start and like work your way up. We're at a point now where all the information is literally, we can find out who we need to look for. So I think at this point, the information is so immediately available that you just owe it to yourself to know who these people are. Just for, myself, but I've always been fascinated with the history of magic. I think I'm a big fan of the standing on the shoulder of giants philosophy. All of this stuff builds, and, it builds off of what came before, but we also, if you don't have that foundational knowledge, which is what a lot of this stuff, like Di Vernon, at this point, Di Vernon's material is foundational knowledge. His cups and balls routine. If you're interested in the plot of the little ball is going to disappear and end up under the little cup, you need to learn the Di Vernon routine. You're not going to perform it that way, probably, but you should at least. So researching these people also it exposes you to their contributions, but it also exposes you to a lot of other information. If you know Di Vernon, that will bring you to the Revelations videos, and then it's going to open your eyes to like Michael Amar and Gary Lett, Steve Freeman in that situation. But also they mention, Jarrow and Leipzig, all these other magicians from the past that are just the materials there and it's hidden. Right. So I think studying and like knowing who these people are makes it easier for you to track down whatever information it is that, it's just good studying, I think.
Right. It's if you're doing cups and balls, you're doing Di Vernon's cups and balls.
Right.
And probably a variation on it, but you're probably doing one of his moves. I don't think I've ever seen a cups and balls that I haven't seen a move that he first did in.
I think Vernon in particular is a great example because of how much he did, right? Vernon was a fantastic link because at the time frame that he was doing it, Marlowe was writing down all the card magic in Chicago, but Vernon was traveling all over and trying to track down gamblers more often than not, but also the magicians. So he was compiling these ideas from different areas, right? And because of that, we have that information. That's why, so to bring this around to Thompsoni, Johnny was a student of Vernon's, and Vernon had dozens of students, if you, depending on what you want to, consider a student, right?
What you want to define as, yeah.
Like, I have a hard time calling myself a student of Thompsoni. I hung out with him a few times, right? We weren't close. He called me a couple of times. You talk about the coolest thing that's ever happened. Your phone goes off at work and you look down and it says Thompsoni. And you're like, I'm either in trouble or this is really going to be awesome. Like something's up. So like we weren't overly close, but like he taught me some stuff. He tipped me to some stuff, but like, would I want to call myself a student or like, it feels weird, right? Because I think that the student-teacher relationship is a little,
I think it depends on how narcissistic you're feeling that day. Like, or if you have if you're doing a new website.
Tomorrow I'm a student of Thompsoni. Today though, right now I'm a little hesitant to say that out loud. But no, so Johnny had the coolest life of anyone that I've ever heard, right? Sometime in the 50s, I think it was, he was 13, runs away from home, joins the circus, right? Out of Chicago, goes,
dope.
Well, why not,
so cool.
right? Skips town, joins the circus. The guy, he wants to be, like Johnny would tell a story of, I bought this book to learn to cheat at cards because I wanted to be a gambler. And I figured out eventually there's really no place for a 12-year-old card shark. And because of that, I had to adapt, So he would pick up the other skills. He would learn the magic. He would do whatever else he could do. But when he would go to the circus, the guy wouldn't need a magician. He wouldn't need a 12-year-old magician, but he would need a 12-year-old sword swallower. Sure, I can hire a 12-year-old. So I know how to swallow swords. And then Johnny went home and learned to swallow swords. Like he was that guy. He needed to do it. So he did it. Really inspiring, right? This is like, I don't know how big the circus was in the 50s, but, I'm a comic book fan, right? And I know that in the 40s, making a kid an acrobat in the circus was kind of acceptable and nobody thought twice about it. So I assume that they were still pretty prevalent. I went to a circus in the 90s, but, but John, like, he learned every trade in the circus. And then he goes off and he starts learning from the magicians, and then he starts compiling all this information, and he becomes the link between that era. I don't want to say the golden era, but like between this previous era of magicians and us. You mentioned Penn and Teller, but Chris Angel and every Lance Burton, every magician that you could possibly, if the magician you're thinking of now doesn't or didn't consult with John, they consult with somebody who did, and when you go to Vegas and you go to the Magic Club and people start talking, oh yeah, Johnny tipped me to this. Oh, Johnny showed me this thing, and sometimes it would be as simple as like, oh, you need to go read this book. And then he would leave, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's what we're going to do. Because the Godfather told you to go read the book.
If Thompsoni tells you to read a book, Thompsoni or Thompsoni?
Thompsoni. Yeah, Thompsoni, exactly. He was the Polish prestidigitator.
Nice.
But John's wife, Pam, was the assistant. She's the prototype, but also the pinnacle. She was she played off of him so well. The act was one of the best in history. They were, they had retired it and they would break it out occasionally for, the magicians, just for the boys. But then Teller started doing it. Teller did it exactly as Johnny did it because they didn't want to step on the memory of how legendary. I really think that Johnny's maybe the most important magician of the last 50 years, you know?
Do, do you know how it worked when somebody would go onto Penn and Teller Fools? Would you tell Johnny what the trick is, and then he would tell
Pretty
them
much.
if you fooled him or not? Okay, because
Yeah.
I knew that he was kind of a producer, like he was the consultant. But
Yeah, it was
do you
Johnny
know
and
how?
Michael Close, and they would
Okay,
be there. I believe the deal is that they've got like a two-way mic, so they can hear Penn and Teller discuss, and then they make the final call whether or not it's like whether they got them. But I never performed. I worked backstage for a day. That was cool. I got to see how all of the stuff, like what the chaos behind the scenes to make that show what
yeah.
it is. That was awesome. But I think my anxiety, whenever it came up to whether or not I wanted to perform, I just think my anxiety got in the way. And I was like, nah, you know what? I'm good. I'm too cool for that. And
I still think you should. I think you should. Like everyone, you and Eric are the only people I'm talking to that aren't going. It's almost like a rite of passage.
some great magic for it, man. Like
He's ready to go. I don't even think he needs to practice.
I was telling him because whenever we first met, right? Like I just don't, I don't, I've been out of the magic, the marketplace scene for a while, So like I keep an eye on the books that come out, but I don't know the new tricks. And one day I just started seeing it ended up being his, but it was the perfect oil and water. And
Yeah,
everybody was doing it. It was in all these reels. And then when we started talking and I'm hanging out with him one day and he's like, oh, here, do you have one of these? And he pulls out one and hands it to me. And I'm like, oh, that's yours? And immediately I started laughing because I was like, man, I didn't realize you're responsible for like the Instagram trick of wherever. I saw 5 people, throw it in their reel. It's just, I think Eric's got some great magic for Penn and Teller. I think that should happen. Yeah, I'm sure I do too. I probably have something that would be fun to do, but like if I were going to go on, my standards for my own self, I think would be.
Yeah.
But have you ever been to the Magic Castle?
Yeah, no, but I want to talk to you about the Magic Castle because
go to the Magic Castle.
You performed at the Magic Castle.
I have been very lucky. I've performed there twice, and I don't know how they let me do that. I always made the joke that, I don't want to perform at the castle. I want to perform at the castle twice because anybody can lie to the right number of people and convince them that you deserve to be there. But like coming back the second time, man, that means that they saw your show and they're like, all right,
yeah,
you belong. And that was so cool. I got to work the first week that I was there. I performed in the close-up room opposite of Doc Doherty, who is one of my absolute best friends. We met.
Oh, okay.
We met the day before 2 or 3 days before Las Vegas shut down because of the pandemic, before the airport shut down and everything. He had done the castle. He flew to Las Vegas to do a lecture at what the Denny and Lee's magic shop had become the Top Hat and Wand magic shop after Denny and Lee's had dropped off of it, right? And so the new owner had taken it over. And we were hosting the lecture with Doc Doherty. He's a magician from North Carolina. And Doc just wanted to come out and hang out in Las Vegas. He wanted to meet a couple of the guys there. And same reason that it was his pilgrimage to the magic capital. And Doc and I hit it off. And then I dropped him off at the airport. He flies out of town. 12 hours later, the airports are shut down for however long they were shut down. And then I moved east, right? And so Doc and I were 5 hours apart. We would see each other. We chat all the time. So it just became one of my best friends. So the first time I perform at the coolest place in the world, I'm doing it opposite of that guy. And then I got to go back a year later and do it again. And I would have gone back. If I go back, I want to do it, before I approach them to bring me back, I want to have something that I think is new and deserving of such a great experience. I don't want to go and like repeat myself. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know that there are 52 weeks in a year and there are only so many slots. and there are so many great performers. So I don't want to go out there and like not, like not put all of myself into it. So
Yeah.
I'll call them whenever I have, whenever I'm like, all right, this is it. Like now I know who I am. Now this is my artistic, then I'll be back there. Yeah. But I got to do it twice, and that was the goal, right? So
nice.
That was one of the coolest things ever. The castle is unlike anything else that I've seen magic wise, because there's that's magic is the purpose, so over here there's close up, over here there's a guy on doing something with boxes, over here there's another room with 70 people, whatever, there's different sizes and different types and philosophies and style, everything. It's all, you see it all. And I got to hang out there quite a few times because my friends would be performing, and whenever I was in Vegas, it was a 4-hour drive. So I just cruise up and down, the best thing, I was doing my shows at the Grand Canyon on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? So I was out of town for 3 days a week. But those other 4 days a week, man, I could, get back and forth. I would be driving to LA as everybody in LA is trying to get to Vegas. So I'm beating traffic both directions. It was the greatest situation ever. So I'd get to go down there and hang out, and I became friends with people that work at the castle. So I'd go down there. I'd see my pals. Mike Pashota is one of the best magicians, one of the greatest people in the world. He's the house bartending magician there forever. So I get to go and just hang out with him if I've got nothing else to do, so I would always have something to do, right? I can go and, Billy Goodwin's the librarian at the Magic Castle, right? Bill Goodwin
that's a great job.
Yeah. And Bill Goodwin is just this encyclopedia, especially of card magic, but he was a student of Larry Jennings, who was a student of Vernon's. So Bill, if I ever want to know anything, hey man, what should I look up? And he would just give me something, so I could go and chat with him and catch up with that guy that, that I've been lucky enough to have been introduced to. So the castle, if there's something you're interested in magic wise, you're going to find someone there who wants to make you better at it. So it's just the best place to hang out.
When you are developing a show, any show, but especially a show for the castle, how do you design an act for something like the castle? How long do you get for a castle act?
At the castle, it's 20 minutes. It's
20 minutes.
A 20-minute slot, and they keep that pretty tight. I've seen people actually, if you go over and you're not a certain caliber of absolute legend, I've seen them, make it very obvious, and they clear up that so it doesn't happen twice. But, they 20 minutes because the people are leaving your show and they're going to the one upstairs that they actually got the big show that's on the marquee that's got that's the one that the people from the outside that aren't members, their tickets are for that show. They just get to check out these other ones. So like they want to make sure, they're very professional about it, but they're very professional about, so the 20 minutes, as far as the design,
it's not a lot of time.
It's not, but it's interesting, right? Because I got really lucky. My shows at the Grand Canyon, I mentioned them earlier. There was a place, it's called the Skywalk. It was the Wallapai Reservation, the native tribe there. They have a giant glass bridge that hangs out of, you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
I know what you're talking about. That gives me anxiety talking. I've seen pictures. I was like, oh yeah, that's never happening.
I was working there the day after someone took a selfie picture and wanted to get a better picture of the giant hole behind them, the most famous hole in the world behind them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't big enough for the angle, so he took a step back and didn't work. So he took another step back, and then he backed himself off the side of the Grand Canyon. I was there the next day and had to like deal with those questions. That was fun.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss an update. It helps us a great deal. It's quick, it's easy, and it makes a huge difference. And we will see you on the next episode.